Hey, beautiful souls, and welcome to Around the Kitchen Table, a space for honest conversations, stories from the heart, and gentle reminders that we're all walking each other home. I'm Laura Island, mother, creative, soul led CEO of Sacred Sister CIC, and the woman behind Wise Sacred Woman. I'm a witch with ADHD. And this podcast is where we gather to share the real, raw, and radiant parts of life. Each week, we'll explore what it means to live in rhythm with ourselves, with nature, and with one another. We'll talk about womanhood, sisterhood, creativity, leadership, spirituality, and the messy magic of being a human. So pour yourself a cuppa, get comfy, and let's meet here around the kitchen table, where stories are medicine and every voice belongs. Welcome. So lovely to connect with you today, although I almost didn't show up. I was not really feeling it. I was wondering what was I going to share with you today. Some days I just know, some days it's like, yep, this is it. We're on this trajectory. This is what we're doing. And this one now it's a bit like, meh. And then I realized that, we're totally in this working with the sister wound. And there's a couple of things that I recognize are the wound showing up for me. One is taking up space. It's like, does anyone really need to hear what I've got to say? Probably not. So why am I bothering? One wound of like, got to play small. No one cares. No one's going to listen. And then the other one is the judgment. It's like, if I don't show up, people are going to judge me. If I do show up and I've got no makeup on and I look a bit of a state, then then people are going to judge me. I did the same last night. We're deep in the sister wound work, and I jump around. Sometimes we're doing this, sometimes we're doing that, but I've recognized the power of this work, and that is the kind of trajectory that I'm on at this moment in time, because I feel like the world needs it. The world needs us to heal those wounds. And so I sat with, am I going to show up? Am I not going to show up? Am I going to be here today? Am I not going to be here today? I'm just going to stay in bed and read a book, which I never do, even though I really want to. But something happened this week, and it's been sitting a little heavy on my heart. And I know I'm not the only one who feels these things. So I wanted to speak today to lineage and the mother wound, and really healing the disconnect between the generations. I see it so much. So a younger woman that I've supported over various times, has messaged me and expressed that she doesn't feel safe anymore to be in one of the spaces that I've created, and she asked to be removed. And truthfully, it stung a little bit. Not because she's left, people are free to come and go, they can do what they want to do, but because of how she left. There wasn't an opening to have a conversation. This happens a lot, by the way. Not a lot. It's not like people leave all the time, but the way people leave, this is a thing. And so, she wanted me to remove her rather than just saying, actually, I'm done with this space and I'm leaving. Thank you for the space. Thank you for the energy. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you. Goodbye. No. What she wanted to just do was for me to remove her. And I was like, well, you can remove yourself. You don't need me to remove you. Like, me removing somebody from the community looks like I have the issue. I don't have the issue. If I had an issue, I would bring it to anybody in my community, anybody. So it hit me because I've seen it before. And it's this pattern where instead of taking true responsibility for our own feelings, we project them outward. We make someone else the reason we feel uncomfortable. We run rather than speak, and we leave rather than close the circle with integrity. And that that's one of the ways that the sister wound still plays out. It's the modern version of disconnection between women, avoidance dressed up as boundaries. It's a lot. So today, I want to talk about lineage because what's happening between generations right now is not just miscommunication, it's pain. It's misunderstanding. It's the echoes of unhealed mother wounds being passed down and played out in new ways. You see, those of us that are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, I liken us to the bridge generation. We were the first to be told we could have it all. Excuse me, hard to find my voice in this because it's such a truth. And again, that part of me that doesn't want to take up space and wants to silence myself because I might put my head above the parapet and get it taken off because of the witch wounds, you know? But we were the first to be told we could have it all, the career, the home, the freedom, the voice. We worked really flipping hard to get there. My mum's generation worked really hard. But let's not forget, like, she was the baby of war babies, right? Like, my grandma had come out of her stuff, her space in that kind of, from that environment. My mum grew up not knowing, if there was going to be enough food, if they'd been kind of brought up through rationed times. They were stiff upper lip Britain. No one could show any emotion. They had to kind of keep it together. And so they've learned. We had to fight to be heard. We had to earn our place in workplaces that weren't built for us. We raised children while working full time, often with partners who didn't share the load, many that had left completely. And we watched our mothers do everything silently. My mum was silently, just happily beavering away. Was she happy? No. My dad's still around. My dad's a truck driver, as if you've been here for a while on this podcast, you all know that. He is still around now. It's not like he left, but he was never around. He was never present, and his working mentality was hardcore. And as long as there was food on the table and a roof over our heads, which I'm absolutely grateful for, then that was enough. How many of us grew up from that place? How many of us are still in that place with men that are absent because they're earning the money, or women that are absent because we're having to earn the money and our cost of living is so high? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have convenience stores and shops. We didn't have fast food and takeaways. And we now call this kind of style of life like, evolution. It's crap. Don't even get me started on that, right? But we were the ones who said, never again, we're not doing this again. But we were also doing it blind. We didn't have models of balance or self-care or emotional language. We were the first to talk about therapy and burnout and trauma, the first to name the wounds, and the last to be thanked for naming them. We carved away. And yet, what hurts sometimes is seeing younger women in their 20s and 30s, looking at our generation with judgment, saying things like, my mum didn't know how to love me, or she wasn't safe, or she didn't understand me. And yes, likely she didn't. That doesn't, I'm not saying that you are wrong to feel that way. But she also lived in a world that never once asked her how she was doing. That makes me quite emotional. When I became a single mum, I didn't have any backing. I didn't have anyone to really support me. I didn't have anyone. I didn't even know who to ask. I didn't even know where to go. We didn't have mental health support. We didn't have, the most I had was a toddler group where basically a bunch of women sat around moaning at each other all the time or basically telling me how amazing their kids were doing and making me feel not good enough because mine weren't doing the same. So before we judge, we need to remember context. Many of our mothers were doing the best they could with what they had and often doing it alone, often trying to find ways to bring in more money. You had to go to work. We wanted it all, we've got it all, and that's amazing. We've done so much. And then we all wonder why we hit menopause and we're absolutely fucked because our cortisol levels are so high, our stress hormones are so high that we run into menopause, a time when actually back in the day, our children would be off our hands. We were having children earlier. We were into marriages, into relationships. Yes, there was also a major problem in that. Most of us just put up and shut up and did what we needed to do to get by. That was the wound. And we have healed so much of that by finding our voices and being empowered and standing where we need to stand. But, our mothers also didn't really have the privilege of self-awareness. They were surviving, not thriving. They were doing the best. And now we're like the bridge women. And we're in this strange middle place. We're old enough to see both sides, tired enough to crave peace, and wise enough to know that the only way forward is through respect and remembrance. This is the big one today. Because as I sit here, I can feel all of those things. I can feel my therapist being like, but to take responsibility for your stuff. And it's like, don't worry about everybody else's. And it's like, I get that. But unless some of us start really speaking up and saying it's not okay to keep blaming the ones that came before, at some point, we do have to, each and every one of us, take full responsibility for where we are in our lives and look at how we do that differently. I'm super proud. I have a 20-year-old, nearly 21-year-old son, a nearly 15-year-old daughter. We've lived life differently. My daughter's homeschooled. She's autistic ADHD. School wasn't her place. She's at home with us. Is that like, am I a reality and I'm proud of that? Like I am proud of it now, but for a long time I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I'd failed because I couldn't give her everything she needed. I went back to work 2 weeks after I had both of my children by cesarean section. Am I proud of that? Does that make me a strong, independent woman? No. It makes me a woman who felt at that moment she had no choice. So have I perpetuated those wounds? Of course I have. Have I perpetuated the wounds of abandonment in my children because I might not be there? Yes, because I wasn't there. Was I doing what I felt I had to do at that time? Absolutely, because I'd created an amazing business for myself, but I was on my own and there was no one else to do it and I had to crack on. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a roof over their heads. It's not easy. So I'm just asking you today to really look at how we can heal the lineage. We also, let's not forget, are a society where we don't respect our elders. We call them elderly and stick them in nursing homes and don't pay attention to their wisdom. We don't believe they have any wisdom. What do they know? They didn't live in this time. They don't have a clue because they have an opinion. And their opinion for many young people is not worthy of anything because they don't understand the internet and they don't understand how we live these days. And so therefore we shouldn't listen to them. I can tell you now, I wish that I had spent more time with my godmother who passed away at 104, who still lived by herself in London up until 6 months before she passed away, who had a hip replacement at 93. I kind of put all of that down to the fact she was also never married. She lost the one man she loved in the war, and that was it. She only just met him before he went to war, and he never came back. And that was her life. I wish I'd spent a lot more time with her sister, who was Winston Churchill's secretary. I mean, I wish I could go back and listen to my elders, understand my ancestry more, know how, know my grandma's story, know my great grandma's story. Because all I know it from now are the places where I feel it in my intuitive way. I'm fortunate that I have built a relationship with my mum, which was not easy, where I've been able to ask her, how was it for you? How was my birth for you? What was I like as a child? Did I spend a lot of time by myself? You know, we carry our DNA from generations upon generations, 7 generations. So you are carrying that of your ancestors. So healing this wound, this sister wound, isn't just about how we relate to our friends and our peers. It's also about how we relate to our mothers, our daughters, our mentors, and even the women that we don't really understand. Because every judgment that we hold about another woman, especially one from a different generation, is a mirror. The way we speak of our mothers is often how our daughters will one day speak of us. Let me just tell you that again. The way that we speak of our mothers is often how our daughters will one day speak of us. Because if you are perpetuating the wounds that came down from your mother, you are going to be passing that on. So do the work. Do the work, because the lineage is always listening. Always. And what I've realized more than anything else is that how a woman leaves a space tells us as much as how she enters it. You know, there's an art to endings, to saying thank you, to having gratitude for the journey, even if it was tough, to closing doors with grace. And yet, so many of us were never taught how. How many of us in this generation, gosh, hard to get these words out today. How many of this generation and younger have been prevalent to relationships that broke down? Like I said, my mum and dad are still together now. I don't know that they should be sometimes, but they are, because they're a generation that wouldn't leave regardless. But then there's the next generation that came that learned that it was okay to say this isn't for me and that I want out. But those relationships were very rarely handled well. So what have we learned from that? And then we've learned to ghost. Honestly, online dating, like I'm not ashamed to admit that I met my husband on Tinder. You know, I met lots and lots of my relationships through internet dating, and I now know that, like from the very first internet dating, like 20 something years ago, I met the father of my children that way. My first husband, second husband. I met my first husband on the internet. I was 22. Like again, we are a generation of people who had firsts. We didn't meet people necessarily in the way that normal people meet in relationships. We met through odd realities. But that you learn very quickly that those spaces teach you so much about yourself if you get really wise. We've become addicted to those spaces, right? But when people don't have the bravery because they think it's going to be conflict somehow, right? So they ghost, they withdraw, they make someone else the villain because we can't sit in our own discomfort. So, sisters, we've got to stop doing that to each other. It's time to bring reverence back to endings, to say, I'm moving on. Thank you for what this has been. That's integrity. That's maturity. And that's lineage healing. So today, our podcast is going to take a little bit of a different stance because I'm going to invite you to connect with your journal. And if you've never journaled before, and if you think journaling is like ick, which to be honest, so do I sometimes, I'm like, ugh, journaling ick, but I do it. And the reason I do it is that by taking those voices in my head out of my head, I have headspace to do the other things that I need to do in life. By giving myself the space to really see what I'm feeling in my internal world, it just has really worked for me and gazillions of other people who journal every day or journal when they need to. So I'll put these prompts into wherever captions you're looking at this as well so that you can find them easily. But here's some prompts for you. And if you've never journaled before, just get a piece of paper out, right? Or the back of a napkin or a fag packet. That's an old saying from when we were kids, right? Stick them on the back of a fag packet. They don't exist anymore, hopefully, in most of your lives. And vape packets aren't that big, but I'd rather you not do that either. But that's another wound of mine, right? Fucking hate it. Anyway. So if you can grab a pen and paper, journal, keep pausing me, get these down and reflect on them. Where do I still carry resentment towards the women who came before me? Where do I still carry resentment towards the women who came before me? How do I speak about my mother or the women who raised me? How do I speak about my mother or the women who raised me? You know, like if you're speaking badly of your mother without any kind of compassion, she may have been the shittest mother on the planet. She may have starved you, beaten you, left you, the most horrific things, because that happens and it's horrific and there are no excuses for that. Some people are just bad people, but they're bad people usually because of the way they've been treated. So how do you speak about that woman? Because that's the lineage you're perpetuating down. What do I expect from younger women that perhaps I never had myself? So, what is our expectation from our younger generation that maybe we didn't have? Like, I do have an expectation that they're going to have learned some things from us because, I have an expectation that they're going to understand where they take responsibility for their emotions, where they learn their emotional well-being. I have a 14-year-old, nearly 15-year-old daughter. And I remember when she was younger and I would take her to my mum's and my mum was my only support network, even though she was miles away and I had to do a 3-hour round trip to drop my children off. But I worked a lot of weekends. And so sometimes that was what I had to do when I had no support. So I would do that. Even when I perpetuate that story, I had no support. I probably would have had support if I'd have been brave enough to ask. But that other wound that said, I'm not going to ask or receive support because I'm on my own, that's another wound. Just saying. So I used to do a 3-hour round trip to drop my kids at my mum's, and my daughter, I'd drop her there. Bearing in mind she'd been dropped at nursery from 3 months old every single day of her life, 5 days a week. So she had a massive abandonment wound. And so I could see her zip it up. I now know she's ADHD autistic as well. I didn't know that back then. Zip it up and hold her emotions. And then I would arrive on the doorstep and she would let them all go when I came to pick her up. And my mum would say to me, "What is wrong with her? Like, why does she cry so much when you pick her up?" It's like, does she not want to leave? It's like, no, she can't wait to get away. She's been holding her emotions because my mum, God bless her, is a pull yourself together kind of woman. You don't need to cry about that. I didn't cry till I was menopausal, believe me, then I cried a lot. So what do I expect from the younger women? that perhaps I never had. I do have an expectation that she can cry and she can hold her own, emotional well-being gently because I've taught her that. I've taught her that it's okay to cry. I've taught her that, we used to get in the car after I picked her up. And my mum never listens to my podcast, so I'm sure I can say this without her worrying. And I would say it with her here. And it used to get used as a kind of threat sometimes. If you're not careful, you're going to nannies because it was never the place they wanted to be. But also, it's like, do you understand that I behave some of the ways that I behave towards you because that was my upbringing? I've helped them to understand my lineage and how I want to change it moving down because I want my great 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 grandchildren to have a very different life to mine. Not because mine's been bad, it hasn't, but because I've learnt to change and understand myself better. And that has a knock-on effect on what I eat, what I use on my skin, what I use on my hair, how I show up in the world, where I recycle. All of that stuff has really gone back to old lineage. Old lineage. My granddad taught me to recycle donkeys years ago, where we put everything in the compost bin. So, what do I expect? This is a question for your journaling. What do I expect? What do you expect from younger women, perhaps you never had yourself? And how can I honor the next generation without resentment or judgment? It can be really hard sometimes to not have a judgment on the younger generation or to not resent them somehow because they do appear to have it easier. Now, I know they don't have it easier, but they do have more help, more support, more awakening, more spiritual language, more ability to kind of say, you know what, like this is who I am, more spaces that they can sit in, more circles. It is available to them in that generation. And so sometimes I get a bit resentful. I get a bit resentful because I've helped and supported so many young women to find themselves, to kind of find their voices, to be empowered, to be inspired, to start their own retreats, to start their own festivals. Do they ever look back and go, thank you, you helped me do that? No. Many of them don't because they're so in their own bubble doing their thing. And so sometimes I can look at that next generation and feel a bit resentful. I'm a bit like, do you know how easy you have it because of the shit we went through? So I'm learning, and I'm going to invite you to journal on how can I honor the next generation without resentment or judgment. And then the final one, what part of me still longs to be mothered? What part of me still longs to be mothered, and how can I meet her with compassion? Those parts of me that didn't get what I needed from my mum, how can I meet them? Because I can't, many of us at this age don't even have our mums to go back to for whatever reason. They've passed, they've left, they've gone. I have some amazing women in our community who are mothers of grown-up children who are having the most amazing life because they've gone, do you know what? You're a grown-up now. I've given you all the tools and all the skills, and now I'm having my life. And I absolutely honor that in them. And I watch the daughters of those mothers who are being able to honor their mum's choices, not from that place of abandonment, but from that place of like, go, mum, right? So, which of those parts of you long to be mothered? I can connect fully in with that little abandoned me that's like, where was my mum? Where was my mum? And I can, like I say, I've built a relationship with my mum now where I can speak to my mum openly. And my mum's first reaction will always be, so you're telling me I was shit, mum? I'm like, no, no, I'm not. I honor the journey that you are on. And I want to honor the parts of me that are painful because of some of what I went through. But you were doing the best you could with what you had. And I love and honor you and respect you for that. But it doesn't mean that I don't carry a wound. You know, at 5 years old, my life changed big time. My brother came along. Up until that point, I'd pretty much been with my grandma because my mum worked full time. She was a hairdresser. My dad was away as a truck driver. This is what I mean. Like, think about your life, really. And so my grandma stepped in, and I went to my grandma's most days when my mum was working. And my grandma taught me to read and write. And my grandma, you know, I went to clean the doctor's surgery, which was my grandma's job at 4 o'clock every 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, probably every day. And I emptied the bins. I can still smell them now, like the medical kind of environment. And it wasn't a doctor's surgery. It was a clinic, Mothers Club. The Mothers Club ran there. There was a community. My grandma taught me to iron. Um, my grandma never put the telly on before 6 o'clock in the evening, and then when it went on, she would watch the 6 o'clock news, and she would go to bed after she'd watched the 10 o'clock news. That was her rhythm. That's what my mum didn't have that growing up. She didn't have the best relationship with my grandma because my grandma wasn't particularly loving to my mum. She wasn't particularly open and found my mum, it was harder for my mum. My mum was the second born. So I'm sharing all of these stories with you because I want you to really begin to open up or the invitation is to open up and look at your story differently. Because at 5, when my brother came along, I then also went to school every day. So suddenly I'd lost my grandma in my life. My brother was not easy, so my grandma kind of stayed out of the picture because she didn't find my brother very easy. He didn't sleep till he was 5. Clearly, perhaps a little neurodiverse. And and so I learned to become quite quiet. I learned to keep the peace. I learned to stay small. I learned to, yeah, I just learned to stay out of the way. This week I was journaling with a group of women on full moon. So basically on a full moon, it's part of the sanctuary of a full moon ritual. And I always dive in, like I don't sit here as the guru. I never have, I never will. I'm sat here as a person sharing with you from my life experiences. And we're all learning from each other if we're open to learn, good and bad. And so I sat there, and one of the questions was, what keeps me separate from the sisterhood? What keeps me from leaning in? And when I journaled on it, what came, which was really surprising to me, was this memory of, being in school. I was tall, I was big, I was a size 14 by the time I was 14. I and 14 stone. So I was a brilliant goal shooter at netball, brilliant goal shooter. Because I was tall, I could hit that net every single time. I wasn't the best at running up and down the court, but I was in and I was on it. I never ever got chosen, ever, ever, because I wasn't the cool kid. I wasn't the geeky kid. I didn't really fit in. I had a little kind of clique of friends, but it wasn't really, I was still wouldn't be picked by them. I would still be the last. Now, if you were playing strategically, I was a good bet. I was going to win you goals. I was going to win that game. But it was personal. It was personal. And so I've lived my life from that wound of not being chosen, therefore not being good enough. And the part of me that needs to be held just needs to know that I choose me. I choose me. I am good enough. I choose me. Every day after day, I choose me. So that was a real awakening for me. Another one. I have them on a daily basis because I'm curious I'm not here making any of those people wrong. I'm just curious. That was a part of me. So what part of you still longs to be mothered, and how can you meet her with compassion? Oh, today's podcast feels like it might be going on for a long time, but I don't really care. If you're still here, thank you for being here. So I'm going to offer you a simple ritual for lineage healing, and we're going to do this short practice together if you feel like you would like to. If not, you can pause, stop, go on. It's your journey. You won't feel rejected because I won't know that you've stopped. So it doesn't matter. Close your eyes if you can. Please don't if you're listening to this in the car. Place one hand on your heart and one hand on your womb or your lower belly if, like me, you don't have a womb anymore. Just because I don't have a womb doesn't mean I don't have the womb space, the space that my womb held, the energy of that space. And if you're a man and you're listening to this, place your hand on your lower belly. You still have a connection to that horror, that place inside of you. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Feel the breath travel down through your heart and into your belly. And as you exhale, imagine the breath flowing through your body down into the earth, into the roots of all the women who came before you. Taking a deep breath in through the nose. Feeling that breath travel down through your heart into your belly. And as you exhale, imagine that breath flowing through your body down into the earth, into the roots of all the women who came before you. And whisper softly, I honour the women who came before me. Another breath in, and this time exhale and whisper, I release the need to blame. One more breath in. And as you exhale, may the wounds end with me. May the wounds end with me. Feel that. Let it settle in your bones. Because this is how we change the story. Not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper. So, to my sisters walking the middle path, the menopausal path for many of us, I see you. I know how much you hold, how misunderstood you sometimes feel, and how tired you are of being the one to explain. But know this, your work is sacred. You are the bridge. And to the younger women, we love you. We're not your competition or your enemies. We're your allies. We fought for the ground that you now walk on. And we're cheering you on, hoping that when it's your turn, you'll hold the women before you with the same grace you want for yourself. And to the elders that came before us, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's lineage. That's healing. And that is sisterhood. So I'll see you next week, sisters. Until then, honor where you came from and love where you're going. Laura out.